Hi, welcome back. This is Steve Stein from Lessonface. What I'd like to do this month now is start putting everything together, both in sort of a thought process and on your fretboard. So basically what we're doing now is we're going to start thinking about all of these different concepts that we've been studying in different layers on our fretboard. And then we're going to start implementing the actual musicality of everything that you're doing, not just understanding things, but how to put them together. So if I take some of my concepts, I have pentatonic, I have pentatonic expansions, I have diatonic, and I have my cage system. And basically what I want to start doing is being able to sort of move in and out of all of those layers to start creating music. So if we think about what music really is, what our job really is as a guitar player, is to create melody, to sing on this instrument. So if I have a particular chord that's being played, let's say I have a G chord that's being played, what I need to do is I need to decide what are all my available options. You know, if you think about it, the first option most people go to is they say, okay, well, where's my, G minor pentatonic, right? And of course, in this situation over a G major chord, let's say we didn't want G minor pentatonic, so we need to find G major pentatonic. So that's the first step, is figuring out where that would be. Okay, then the second step is expanding that pentatonic to start adding in those extended notes, which actually wind up creating diatonic anyway, but those are... So we have those. Now, if you're like me, one of the main problems that I had for many, many years was there was really no theme to my playing. I would just move around. I knew how to play shapes, and I knew how to play different things, licks and whatever. And I would just move around the fretboard, not really making any kind of music. And so once I started realizing that really the goal of music is to create melody, I mean, I always call it tipping your hat. You're tipping your hat to the chords that are being played and the rhythms that are being played. You don't want to constantly just disregard those. And the example I'll use is meandering. If you watched my video a while back, meandering is a great tool to learn how to play your entire fretboard. What it does not teach you is phrasing. So now, for the next few months, to round out the rest of the year here, that's the kind of stuff that we want to be focusing on. So I've got this G chord, and I'm going to start utilizing the concept of the caged chording system, along with whatever scale it is that I'm utilizing. And I'm going to start blending those two things together to create some unique and musical sounding movements. So, for instance, if I could see that there's a G major chord here, and I could see that there's a G major chord here, and even a G major chord up here, which is part of the cage system that we were doing. Now, over that chord, so what I start doing is visualizing those chordal shapes. Now, if you know all your theory and you know all the notes on your guitar, we could talk in terms of root and third and fifth and seventh and that sort of thing. And that's great, but I don't have time to do that in this video. What I do want to do is I want to relate to the visual aspect that you're utilizing in your playing. So if you can see those chords and you can see this scale, what you're doing is you're connecting those two elements together. So instead of just going up and down a scale, or going up and down a caged concept to create an arpeggio, you're starting to utilize those two elements together, but always, again, tipping your hat to one of the notes that exists over that G chord. So for instance, when I play this G chord, this note, or this, or this, or this, or this, any of those notes are going to sound great over that G chord. Now, some might sound better than others, but they're all going to sound just fine over the top of that G chord that your rhythm player is playing. So as long as I understand that, if I go to my next position, those notes are, again, those are all compatible with my G chord. If I go up here, those notes are all compatible. So again, instead of just running through those shapes, I want to start utilizing my concept of meandering, but now start adding in melodic content, which I call chord chasing. So as I'm playing, that G chord is there. And then let's say an E minor chord comes up. Well, now I want to visualize my fretboard in an E minor situation. Now, the cage system doesn't really apply as well as functional with minor chords as it does with major chords, because you're going to notice that last month I didn't hit on any minor chords. So there are some minor shapes that it's really important that you learn, though. So for instance, we know that if we've got E minor, I've got a 5th string E minor right here, 6th string E minor right here. Sorry. Or what I could do is I have some shapes of E minor that I'm going to be using. Now again, my goal isn't just to use those shapes as arpeggios or sweeps just to play fast. If that's one of the things that you're looking for, that's awesome. And you can implement that, but it's not going to solve all of your problems. You still need to think about melody. So if I'm moving from my G chord, and I'm intertwining the pentatonic with the caged or the diatonic with the caged, whatever it is I've got visually in my head, then that E minor chord comes up. What I do then is I start trying to reassess what I'm seeing and start shifting to an E minor style shape. See? So I'm still seeing the same skeletal choral, or excuse me, scalar shape underneath. I'm still seeing the G major scale, which is the key that I'm in. But I'm switching my emphasis to the notes of the E minor chord. So this G is being played. And E minor comes up. And then maybe a C chord comes up. You know, whatever. I mean, you could be doing all kinds of different things. And of course, as we're playing, there's a lot of different conceptual things that are going on here, and that's what I want to spend the next few months really trying to tie in with you, is understanding that when a guitar player looks at a chord progression, the easiest thing to do is to summarize all of your chords and say, we're in the key of so-and-so, so we're going to use this scale and we're going to emphasize these notes at different times. Over the G, I'm going to emphasize notes of the G, and E minor, I'm going to emphasize the notes of E minor, and so on. And you need to be able to do that, obviously. Again, everything at this point is all you know, I break everything into really 3 different categories. The first category is understanding, which can be theory, it can be visual, it's all kinds of different things like that. The second category is technical, your physical ability to play and execute concepts that you like. And then the third category, which is we're going to spend the rest of the year really talking about, is the creative element of trying to make things sound musical, not just playing, moving around, but actually trying to concentrate on something, how something sounds and how something feels and those sorts of things. So with this chord progression, I could situate myself in being in a key and then following these particular chords around. So G is playing, E minor comes up, and then C comes up, and then D comes up. So again, I'm just following these chords around, making, you know, melodic connections between each chord. But it goes a lot further than that. Obviously, I could chase each chord around individually, and the rules are going to constantly change. And so, you know, if you listen to Stevie Ray Vaughan versus Steve Vai versus B.B. King versus whoever, they're all incredibly, incredibly talented guitar players, but they all approach the guitar differently. Their notes are the same. The scales are scales, but it's the way that they approach playing, and that's what I want you to really start focusing on this month, is understanding the concept of layering, okay? So you've got a scale, and you've got this cage system. So for instance, what I'd like you to do is take a simple chord progression, and you can go on YouTube and look up jam tracks or download a jam track or whatever it is, but I want you to start thinking about just creating a nice easy chord progression. Let's say it's G, E minor, C, D, which is a 1, 6, 4, 5 chord progression, a really common chord progression. So do a web search for G minor, C, D, find a chord progression, or if you have the availability to record yourself, take G, E minor, C, and D. And now just start learning to explore the fretboard with that multi-layer concept, okay? So you're seeing a scale, and then you're going to see the cage system over the top. Now, again, without boring you with all the talking, you have to understand that as you're doing this, your whole solo doesn't have to constantly be nodding or tipping your hat to the chords. Okay, sometimes you might be following those chords. C comes up. G comes up. some licking or some pattern or whatever it is that you might like to do. Sometimes you're going to go off. You're just going to go off and do some cool things, and you're going to disregard the logic of the melody. The problem is if your playing already completely disregards that logic of melody, that's what you're missing. And again, I know this because I spent so many years trying to learn how to solo, and all I was doing was regurgitating ideas. I would learn a pattern or learn a scale or whatever, and then I'd go to play, but I really was never listening to the progression that was being played underneath me, or I was playing, you know, the numbers game where, you know, today I hit quite a few things that sounded like they were pretty good. You know, tomorrow I kind of blew it and I didn't really land on the right things. You stop playing the numbers game and you start learning how to absolutely see your fretboard. So when you feel like going off and just playing, you do. But then at some point, you come back. For me, some of the greatest solos that have ever been written by people are ones that kind of build in. They start, you know, kind of slow, and they start moving, and then all of a sudden it just hammers you in the head, and then it comes back out again, and it goes back. And the beauty of being able to kind of multi-layer your fretboard is that you have that availability. Now, if your technique is lacking, or you don't have licks, or you don't have patterns or something like that, or you can't speed pick, then of course those are elements that you want to continue trying to work on as well. And this is what learning is all about. So next month, we're going to start really getting into the conceptual idea of what really goes on within the concept of a person's mind when they're soloing. This month, what I want you to do is really start exploring that layering concept. And again, you can use any chord progression you want, but to keep it constant, if you're going to contact me with any questions, just make it something really easy like G, E minor, C, and D, or somehow using those 4 chords, so you can really start getting comfortable with your entire fretboard in a scalular sense and in a cage sense, and you can start getting comfortable with just moving back and forth between those ideas. And then next month, we're going to expand on this. So have a great practice, and stay positive, and we'll talk to you soon.